The parable of the labourers in the vineyard appears on the surface very simple, but it's actually quite complex. It only appears in St. Matthew's Gospel, and there have been many different interpretations about its meaning. Janice will read it to us.
For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire men to work in his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and sent them into his vineyard. About the 3rd hour, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, "You also go and work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." So they went. He went out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour and did the same thing. About the 11th hour, he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them, "Why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing?" "Because no one has hired us," they answered. He said to them, "You also go and work in my vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first." The workers who were hired about the 11th hour came, and each received a denarius. So when those came who were hired first, they expected to receive more. But each one of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. "These men who are hired last worked only 1 hour," they said. "And you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day." But he answered one of them, "Friend, I am not being unfair to you. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the man who was hired last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous?" So, the last will be first, and the first will be last.
Quite understandably, the labourers who'd worked all day were unhappy about the fact that all the workers, even the last to be employed, would be paid the same. The landowner tells them that they had agreed on the daily wage, and that what he chose to do with his money was up to him. So what can we make of this? Is it right? Is it fair? Our instinct would be to agree with the grumbling workers who've slaved all day in the hot sun, only to find that they're being paid the same as those who only worked for an hour. It really doesn't seem fair. But we should remember that Jesus' parables often turn the accepted order of things on their head. And remember too that the stories, rooted in the sort of everyday life which was understandable to his listeners, were illustrations of deeper spiritual truths. And we should also remember to look at the context in which this parable was given. In Jesus' day, many small farmers were being forced off their land because of debts incurred through having to pay the high taxes imposed by Roman rule. So large groups of unemployed men would gather each morning hoping for a day's work. If they were still waiting at 5 o'clock, they'd have little chance of earning enough for food for their families. And of course, those waiting without much hope of work would be the weakest, the oldest, the disabled. Understanding this begins to give a different slant to the story. There are many meanings to be teased out of this parable. It's about God gathering people at different stages and ages of their lives. It's about the poor, the disadvantaged, those at the end of every queue when it comes to food, medicine, shelter. Again and again, Jesus stresses that the last will be the first and the first last. It's about a reversal of what's really important. Status, hierarchy, rank, power, the important things that we perceive in the world, or the things of God's kingdom, the ones that are eternally important. Was the parable told as a rebuke to the disciples who kept arguing about which of them was the greatest and which would be the first to enter the kingdom of heaven? On reading this parable, maybe we shouldn't rush to judgment about the unfair landowner. Perhaps the parable isn't about the workers at all, or about the vineyard. Let's take a moment to rethink it and call it the parable of the generous landowner. That gives an altogether different perspective. He agrees a fair wage. He goes out again and again to gather in more people. When the workers grumbled, he tells them, "Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage?" And he asks them, quite reasonably, if he isn't allowed to do what he chooses with his own money, and asks if they're envious because he is generous. The parable makes me think of the prodigal son, whose father unreservedly welcomes him back, despite the son leaving home and squandering his inheritance. The grumbling of the vineyard workers echoes the grumbling of the brother of the prodigal son, who stayed behind on the farm and didn't go off to lead a profligate life. Jesus' parables invariably lead us to an appreciation of the overwhelming generosity of God, who forgives us time after time, who doesn't consider the apparent worthiness or unworthiness of those seeking to enter the kingdom of heaven, or whether we come to faith early or late in our lives. Most probably, as with all Jesus' parables, all those meanings are woven together in this multi-layered text. So how does this apply to us, living in the world? Is the kingdom of heaven something we can only experience when we die, or is it already here on earth? We can show something of God's generosity right now in our own lives. It needn't be in large ways. It needn't be in financial ways. Every small act of loving kindness, every phone call or email to someone we haven't seen for some time, every thoughtful gesture, every kind word is showing God's love and demonstrating his generosity. If we open our eyes, the kingdom of heaven is all around us, and we can and should be a part of it. Amen.